Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It is another week of our session with Genevieve Gaignard, our inaugural artist in residence here at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. My name is Erica Wall, and I just want to welcome everyone. We're really excited about today's session. I see all these people coming on. It's so great. I'm going to jump right into it like I always do. And each week we've done these sessions with Genevieve so that we can help artists out there who strive and aspire to do all the wonderful things that Genevieve has done, to give them some means of transparency to navigate all of it. And then for the rest of us to understand what it all means. So we have the pleasure today of having with us Alexandra Terry, who is the Associate Curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Santa Barbara, who actually curated a show that had opened right before we all went into lockdown amidst this pandemic. So Alexandra joined us, and we thought this was a wonderful opportunity for her to share with us how that show all came about. And so this is actually one of a two-part series. So the first part, we're going to talk about how things like this come to fruition. Genevieve had talked about how long it took in between the initial conversation and it actually taking place. Good things take a while. And then after that, next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the logistics, what actually goes into creating a show like the one that opened. And it was part of Bloom Projects, which I thought was really amazing. It features artwork by regional, national, and international emerging, early career, and under-recognized artists. I think that's amazing. So that was what it was, and it is called Outside Looking In. It opened on March 5th, and yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the way it always goes, I'm sure lots of people will have questions, and we definitely want you to ask questions. Stay on screen if you can. We love to see your face. This is a group of people that have come together quite a few times, so it's always nice to see everybody's faces. And if you have a question, you can either raise your hand digitally or raise your hand, and Veronica will let us know if you have a question. I know that you guys have a slideshow prepared for us, so we won't abruptly interrupt if there's something really connected to that. Maybe we'll let the person chime in, but we'll definitely, I'll give a heads up about half an hour before our time is done so we can have some Q&A if that works for you guys. Cool. All right, so welcome Genevieve, Alexandra, and everyone else. Thanks for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to them.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
I'm oh Dean Harrison's here. Sorry.
Oh my God. Hi, everybody. This is so awesome. I mean, I've been joining these calls for a few weeks, but it's interesting to be on the other end of things.
And I know our brothers were showing up. I could have told my brothers.
And our brothers and our moms are showing up.
Mom's here too. OMG.
I don't know why, but I feel less nervous when I'm speaking in person to people than I do when I'm on Zoom.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? What is that phenomenon? I'm like I'm so nervous, you guys. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Jump right in. Oh God. Sure. Oh no, you guys. I have to open system preferences.
It's okay. Hit it, Genevieve. Play us some tunes. I'm kidding.
Okay. The weekend is coming back on. I mean, I'm not, but I am. I don't have any service in the woods here, you know?
Where are you today?
Sorry, I can stop that.
Okay.
All right.
Beautiful.
Remove this. So, hi everybody. So I will have these slides up for a while we talk through things, and then come back so we can see each other's faces and ask some questions. But so Genevieve, you and I first met in 2018, I think. I think it was spring 2018.
Okay, I'd take your word for it.
Take my word for it. But basically, I first became aware of Genevieve's work online, really. I hadn't seen it in person, but I came across it online, and I immediately knew that I needed to get in touch. I wanted to reach out. And so I got in touch with your gallery at the time, and happened to be coming down to LA. And I kind of wanted to talk about that process of the formation of curator-artist relationship, because it can be, you know, it's like a behind the scenes sneak peek at what happens. But I also think it's helpful to talk about the formation of those relationships for curators at any level, but, you know, emerging curators and emerging artists, and because it happens in so many different ways. But here's us now. This is us at the Vielmeyer booth.
Last interaction together.
At Frieze, at your legendary Frieze booth. I think your studio manager, Erin Thompson, took this. That was the first time I met her. But basically, you know, I remember being in LA, walking around, getting a phone call from you because your gallerist at the time had given you my phone number. And I was super nervous and, you know, just really excited to meet you. And we had what I thought was a really great studio visit. I came to your studio that you're at now in LA. It was really fun. Like, it was so cool. That was the first time I saw your work in person, actually, because I'd only seen it online until that point. But basically, as Erica mentioned, there was a big, you know, kind of gap. I call it the ghosting phase, when I ghosted you.
I just want to mention this photo a little bit more, just to say, like, this sums up, like, that kind of connection that we kind of had, you know?
Yeah.
We get things done, like, professionally, but we're totally goofing around, like, at the same time.
All the time.
Which I wouldn't say works for everyone. You just got to gauge that. Yeah.
And so that's like one of the big questions that I had for you throughout this talk. I was thinking about it, I was preparing, and the idea of trust came up. And there's so many levels of trust that we have to engage in when you're producing an exhibition. You know, you're basically, in some exhibitions, you're suddenly working with a total stranger. You know, I mean, you have this kind of short period of time to get to know each other and to get in a groove. It doesn't always happen, but like you said, I think like we got into a groove pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
just feeling like we got each other's kind of vibe. It always feels great when a curator comes to your space and they're already like interested and engaged, opposed to just being like, oh, I've heard about you, but I'm not really sure what you're about, you know?
How often do you think that happens?
I could look back at my schedule, but I mean, definitely times that I've had people in my studio that I realize that like it really is the first time that they've engaged with the work, you know?
Wow.
So, which is still like a way to work, obviously, but
for sure. And actually, I think like some exhibitions probably come out of like, maybe that's not the intention. Maybe it's like, because do you get groups that come to your studio as well, like groups from, I don't know, different foundations and different collector groups and stuff like that?
No, my roommate does, and I can hear them all laughing on the other side and
drinking champagne.
I'm just like, one day groups of people will want to swarm to my studio.
Oh, we're bringing groups. As soon as this is over, we're bringing.
I'm on that.
So yeah, like for me, that's the way I always want to work. It doesn't always happen. but I just want to be in a vibe with someone and feel like we're on the same team, and we're working towards the same cause.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna flip screen. So this is kind of jumping ahead, but so basically we had a studio visit and I felt great about it. We really vibed, and then a big chunk of time it like lapsed between that studio visit and me kind of following up about a specific exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was really about kind of institutional timing, and that's one of the notes that I put down. It's like we spend a lot of time, going to shows and going to fairs and meeting people. And I think it's not always just that you have a great connection and you click. It's also so much about timing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how you feel like the timing for other exhibitions that you've been in, like what, did you feel like they came together kind of quickly, or was it over a long period of having different conversations?
The show that I think about, the other show that I think about the most is the show that I did at CAM, in terms of like feeling like I really gelled with a curator. So Naima Keith was the curator of that show.
Yeah.
And I think that experience helped with our experience, I think back to that particular show and thinking about often like thinking how much trust I felt like Naima had in me, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And this show is obviously different because one of the installations is birthed out of that show, so we're seeing it again. But I think that I felt that you had that same feeling, like and as a curator, I think you have to learn that skill of gauging how much push and pull you need to have with a particular artist, because I'm sure some folks really need to be, babied, not meaning like they don't know what they're doing, but just like a little more support, opposed to me kind of seeing exactly what I need to have like in my head and then trying to translate that to you all, and then you see this thing in front of us that we're looking at on the screen, and it's just like, whoa, how did you guys do that? Like, that's exactly what's in my head, minus like that one thing that adds to it, so there's like a bit of flexibility.
Out, exactly. And I think, in these conversations, I think it's so important to stress basically that there are as many ways of connecting, of artists and curators coming together, of exhibitions coming together, as there are people. I mean, there's really no one way, for this to happen. And again, it's often about energy, and then it's often about that energy coming together at the right time. But I think particularly for younger artists or for emerging artists, I think it's important just to stress, like, there are no rules about how these relationships come together. I mean, there are people that I have known, one of the exhibitions that I curated early on as the associate curator here at MCASB was with a colleague, with a friend, basically, that I knew from when I was living in London, and many years passed, and it just happened to be the right time. So I think it's important, but I also love the fact that you brought up in one of the previous calls here, the fact that so much time elapsed between me reaching back out to you and you were kind of like, what happened?
She seems so jazzed. I guess I just didn't, make the cut. And I also realized that, the different spaces are working and meeting tons of different artists, so I think that me bringing that up is just to say, like, if you have that interaction with someone and you don't hear back, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just, and I talk about this a lot, just like things happen when they're supposed to.
Yeah. And that I wanted to talk about that as well. So it's another level of trust. It's like trust in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask what your thoughts are, and that's basically what you're touching on. It's kind of, it's about patience. It's about believing in yourself and believing in the process and trusting that the right thing is going to happen at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the course of my career that has looked different. You know, when I was working with Naima, I was just like, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just like, I want to build a house in the middle of this, you know, space. I want to build 2 houses for that particular show. I've never done that, but it's cool that like when you're working with a museum, there's folks that can kind of make your vision come to life.
Yeah, so let's maybe then talk about the image that's here on the slide. It was like, one of the great things about working with you is that you trust yourself so much. Like, that's the feeling that I get. There's so much self-trust that doesn't mean you're not flexible. You know what I mean? I think it's not like you're like, this is how it's going to happen, and I know this is the right way. It's more that you're just really grounded and in the moment and trusting yourself. And basically, I don't think you had been to the museum before your site visit, had you?
No, I hadn't. And
Are we-
honestly, when I left that place, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to figure this one out.
Crazy, because you showed up and you were like, okay, I want to do an installation and this, and I wanted to, like, the feeling I had when you were in the space, you knew.
I'm professional. So like, I think I was just like, yeah, I could see something happening, but I feel like I remember calling Aaron and being like, I don't know, they said something about not putting anything on the walls. And I was like, so can we build some walls?
Yeah, you can do a show in here, but you can't put anything on the walls.
There was some sort of like,
there was
there was just like that push to like think outside the box, and the best way I could do that was to build another box inside the book.
Exactly. So we did end up putting things on the walls, which we'll see, but you did come up, I mean, you really were like, I have, this, I want this space. I think we even kind of like measured it out, spaced it out. But so basically Arturo Soto, who was our lead preparator, immediately was able to put together this SketchUp, and these SketchUp pieces, I mean, I think we had a back and forth. Like we had maybe 6 versions. Like when I was looking back at the photo, we had 6 versions of the layout.
Right.
I don't even think this is the last one, but I picked this because it felt like the most like accurate for what's in the space right now.
Well, looking at this shot, it reminds me how, I felt a little bit like, how are we going to pull this off? Plus there's this giant pillar in the middle of the space, or not the middle, but like in the room. And I think it was your team that really was like, well, let's incorporate that to make it look like it's part of the structure. So you're less drawn to it as like the structure of the museum and more like it's a part of the installation,
So we're basically like assuming that this is a chimney or some sort of architectural element. And then we added this drain pipe, which is in the space, which I love.
I didn't envision that. And it was also like, I think because I did feel like your team was really there to help and support me. And this was a reiteration of a show that already existed, or an installation that already existed. So it's like I had that kind of openness to how it could kind of transform a little bit,
So, exactly.
So letting you guys kind of take the reins in certain aspects of it,
which was really fun. And that's another thing that I kind of like talking about. There's also this process, like the process of building the vision also incorporates so many variables, like being able to source the right materials and having access. I mean, we're based in Santa Barbara, so we have pretty good resources, but if we need to, sometimes we need to go to LA. Like, you know, we got the flooring in LA, but that was mostly because you had already identified a spot that had what you wanted.
I had shag carpet. I mean, there aren't a lot of options.
No, it's true, because I asked Arturo early on, like, let's start looking for pink shag carpet. And he was like, I don't know where I'll find that. But I just want to backtrack a little bit, because I sort of jumped, I missed out this big chunk, which is that in between of like, okay, great, let's do a show. And then you did your site visit, but then there was a, you know, conversation. A lot of that was on email, some of that on the phone about what is this? Because you have many different bodies of work that are, you know, congruous with one another, but also the works that I had seen when I did a studio visit with you were earlier works. It was like 2 years had passed. So there was new work that I hadn't seen in person. So there, again, then there's that negotiation of what do we show now?
Yeah. And I think I also wanted to push you on that too, because I create the work, but I was really interested to see how you and your interest in the overall themes that I address, like how you could elevate that in this space. Because I just remember kind of having this own struggle with myself, being like, I don't want to do something that's I've already done. Do you know, like let's bring it to the next level, you know, with existing work. And how do we do that?
Yeah, that's a question I have for you. It's so these installations had been shown before, and you had, like in your cam show, like you said, you had that, you created that house, that structure within a structure. So those are pre-existing elements. And then some of the work is, I think it's between 2016 and 2019. So how, in your mind, how do you work on creating something new and a new context out of not just pre-existing work, but pre-existing elements?
Well, I think it was kind of fun to, once you had made your selection of what you wanted to have in the show, it made it easier for me to kind of come up with what like a title around the whole thing could be, especially once we decided we wanted to have this structure inside the center of the room. And the original cam bedroom also originally was shown with a bathroom. So we had this other bathroom installation that originally wasn't together, and this is something I'm seeing as I create, like the work, no matter really what year it has been made, it still continues to lend something to its counterparts, you know, or its future and its past. So it's really a journey to like see how all those things continue to like thread together.
Oh, and I guess we should say, for people who don't know, like this room within a room, this structure that's in the middle of our gallery, is made up of 2 separate installations. So on the left, with this little sink and little toilet, this little SketchUp toilet, that's an installation called Be More. And we'll talk more about the specific pieces in our talk next week. But the piece on the right is Black is Beautiful. And you had shown Black is Beautiful, like it was at Crystal Bridges, and it was also in your cam show, but you had never shown it with Be More before.
Right. And again, I think that having it go through these different iterations lent to having its flexibility to kind of see how you guys would work with it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think I do have people that follow my work, so it's nice to show them how they can kind of view it in a different way. And like those two in conversation with each other, although originally they weren't built together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that add to the conversation?
Right. And then when you're in the space now, it feels like they were made to be together.
That also is because of how like locked in like the structure was built, you know, like we kind of.
And we're really lucky because Arturo and Tom Pazderka, who are 2 of our well, like I said, Arturo is our lead prep, and Tom they work really well together, and they're both like, they're carpenter, they were like, Arturo was immediately able to envision this, which allowed, that's another thing about the curatorial process, is if your team is in sync with one another, it's not just that you and I being in sync, but institutionally being in sync. I mean, him being able to envision this and then put it in SketchUp allowed for me to better see the exhibition as it was unfolding. And that's what a good team, I think that's what a good team does for one another. Everybody feeds in their own skill set. And I think it's collaborative. You know, I think the best exhibitions are really collaborative.
And I think even if I'm thinking back when I first came to see the space, and, you know, I checked it out, I met everyone, and then it was like, okay, let's go to lunch. I think not just with you and me, I think there was like a steady like connection with everyone. And I think you guys maybe thought, oh, she actually is someone we would hang out with. You know, like sometimes you don't know how laid back someone's going to be. And not that I'm not serious when it comes to the work, but I also, it's weird because even when we were installing, I'm sure you saw me go through modes where I'm like, this is silly, and I'm like goofing around. But then I'm like, no, I need this to be like this.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I'm similar. You know, I think I don't take myself so seriously, and I have more fun. And it's not that installing is about fun, but, you know, I think it's such a installation. So I'm going to change slides. So we're going to talk about installation now. It can be so stressful. It can be, because it's this, you might work on a show for a year, for 2 years, for 3 months, whatever. But then you have this, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 day period where everything physically has to come together. So it's not just the building, but it's like you know, it's like putting the Christmas tree together. All of a sudden, all the parts are coming together, and you're excited, but it's like, it's stressful. And
but I didn't feel any of that with this particular, because I literally, you know, we looked at the measurements, and we got we got all of the parts and the sizes and everything figured out.
Yeah.
But man, was I surprised, and I'm sure Aaron had the same feeling, my studio manager, that when we walked in, we were just like blown away.
Cool.
Because it was literally just like, oh, the house is here. We don't even have to like think about it. Yeah. Like, look at that. It was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, those guys, I mean, we have this amazing team, and I know I can rely on them. Like, I'm going to walk in, and then there's this house. And we also have an amazing exhibitions manager, Sarah, who is juggling all of the bits. You know, she's talking to lenders, she's talking to the gallery, she's talking to Arturo, making sure all the bits and pieces are coming together. So again, it's teamwork. And
I remember thinking that it was such a small team too. And I was like,
yeah, really small. Yeah. I know. Which, you know, that's a totally other story. Like massive institutions that have a huge team, and there's so much going back and forth. I mean, it's just a very different experience, but everyone on our team is doing all the things all the time.
Right.
And that kind of allows us to make spur of the moment decisions. I have to say with your exhibition, that's going back to the trust that you have in yourself, and the trust that we had in you, and the trust that I'm glad to know that you had in us. We didn't have to make any like scary last minute crazy decisions, like, because you knew, like, okay, here's the flooring. On the right, you see the pink shag carpeting. And on the left is the bathroom flooring. And even when there was sort of like a question, I remember I was sending you images of Arturo, like trying to decide how we were going to divide the widths of the flooring. And you just knew, you know, it wasn't this like humming and hawing and going back at like, oh, can you take a photo from this angle? Like, I texted you and you're like, no, I know, down the middle.
And I also remember you coming to the studio one time with color swatches. And I was like, oh, let's go with this one. And you're like, well, I can get you more like options. And I was like, yeah, no, we don't need to go. You know, I was just like, it was a little bit like sometimes too many options slows it up.
Totally.
And I think I already have like a vibe of like what my color scheme is.
Yeah.
So it made it easier, but I think you were like, oh, that's it. Okay.
So surprised. I was like, oh, you can just like check it out and let me know. Who's that?
I don't know. There's a lot of car activity in my
Your vicinity.
vicinity. So it's also raining again. So last time, if you folks weren't here, I always pretty much zoom from my car. And so a storm is a brewing again. So I'm just going to put up the old windows. Sorry about the beep.
In a van down by the river.
Yes. The windows are going to start steaming up. I apologize. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, I was so surprised. I was like, if you want a week to think about if those are really the color samples you want, that's fine. You're like, no, these are the colors. I mean, I gave you like 10 of each color and you're just like, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
I think also that I was also working on other things, do you know?
Well, you had your freeze
Yeah.
coming up.
So there was already things that I really didn't know that I was in the middle of, that this, since it's had a life in other places, it felt a little easier. Like I feel more comfortable making the quicker decisions when, when you kind of are familiar with the thing,
And it was interesting for me because we're working on this show, which, as we said, it's work made between 2016 and 2019. And then I came to the studio and you were in the midst of finishing your work for your freeze show at the Vielmetter booth. And it was so interesting for me to see like the new work and super exciting. And then it kind of got me thinking about, obviously the context that runs throughout all of your work and all of the different threads. But just, I was so excited that, LA is an hour and a half away from us. And so for certain people to have the ability to see your freeze work and to see this work and to really see how cohesive it all is, but also to kind of get that history of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That didn't work though, because we had to close the museum. Sorry
about it.
So here's another shot. We worked with, we worked with a wallpaper installing crew.
Why, did I disappear?
No, because this is one of the image where the wallpaper is upside down.
This is great.
Okay, we had a mishap. One of only, like maybe that's one of the only mishaps we had.
Yeah, but I think it's good for people to know. And it's also, because every other picture you had sent me, I was just like, oh my gosh, like the wall. So I have these guys that do my wallpapering in the LA area, and they're twin brothers. And I've worked with them enough that I'm like, I feel like they've got it. Like I don't have to worry about them. So they made the trek up to Santa Barbara, which was awesome. And then so I felt really relaxed about the wallpaper, because that's usually one of my things that is like the most nerve-wracking. But you did send me this picture, and I felt bad that I had to make the call because it looked like they had already gone so far, and you were like, yeah, they're gonna have it all done. And I was like,
well, okay, so what we should tell people is that so the wallpaper on the left is a contemporary paper, right, but the wallpaper on the right is vintage, and you sourced it from Etsy.
Yeah, it's a very specific place that I get all my vintage stuff. We're not going to tell you the exact link.
But all that to say, there are very limited amounts of this wallpaper. So I send this photo to Genevieve and she calls me immediately and she's like, the wallpaper on the right is upside down. Take it off immediately.
I didn't say take it off immediately.
Take it off immediately. Burn the house down.
I was just like, is there enough for them to like try again? I could live with it, but I would feel like I was standing on my head.
No, and it was perfect timing, right? Because we had just enough. So they couldn't salvage any of that. And when I told them, they looked at me like, I've been like breathing down their necks all day. Like, okay, let me send this to Genevieve. Let me send a picture to Genevieve. Because they had, long story short, you couldn't be there at that time. So I was like FaceTiming and you know, look, this happens. Like, we're super lucky that you're based in LA. We're not far. You were going to come anyway. There are times when artists are installing an exhibition, they can't be there.
Yeah.
You know, or
I even remember thinking, I was like, I have an extra roll of that, I think, in my studio that I was like, if I have to bring it, I will.
Yeah. So
And
they had to take it off.
Yeah.
And they salvaged, I think, like just one strip. But anyway, we got there.
Totally resolved.
Totally resolved. And I wanted you to see, like, legitimately, we have 4 or 5 ladders open at any one moment in the gallery. This is real life.
It's
so
not
hey,
superstitious at heart.
Yeah, and I've learned to just walk under a ladder and be okay with that. It's one of the big things I've discovered. So we then, like, the structure's up, so all of that happened, and then you arrived. I mean, you arrived and the flooring was down, the wallpaper was up, and then it's time to get pieces on the wall.
Right.
And again, I mean, you knew within like millimeters where you wanted. I mean, we had decided where most pieces, I mean, we had an idea of what walls, like photographs were going to go on, but we hadn't decided which. And I remember just walking in, you're like, okay, like, you knew,
Like,
and
some stuff. Yeah.
yeah, which I loved. I mean, and it looks like it worked so well. And that doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes you hang and you take it down and you move it around.
Yeah. Where I'm like, no, we gotta, I don't even know if I was like, we have to get this done, but I wanted the hard stuff to be done so we could have fun. Do you know?
Yeah. Not
And
that we weren't having fun anyway.
And it was also funny because I would be like, okay, I think I want it roughly there. But then Arturo would like put the level up and he's like, you were like really close. Like, that was almost exactly where it was supposed to be hung.
Yeah. Hanging the mirrors was a I mean, I think for me, the piece on the left, that was the most time consuming. But, well, I didn't really work on the inside of the room. That was probably the most time consuming for you.
Yeah, when I was thinking about, I think Sarah was in there a lot watching me, and I might have moved like the bed back and forth, like really tiny moves, but I was just like, oh wait, and then I would step back. I also was weird because like there were like 5 people watching me as I like did this weird like OCD thing, and then I'd step back and look at it and I'm like, okay, fine, that's great, and then I'd walk away like, my work is done here.
It's true. I mean, you're like the millimeter. I mean, everything, like anything that needed to be moved was literally millimeters. Like, no, that needs to be 2 millimeters higher. But I mean, it like
with a ruler, it was just like a visual thing that I just,
yeah, these are conceptual millimeters that we're talking about. So I also love this photo on the right because it's like, we need 3 people. Actually, we needed 4 people because I had to put the pins in. So 4 people.
That was a vintage poster, and if it got torn, it could curl up really easy. Yes. I was just like, no, don't.
But I also love the eye line. Like, keep your eyes above the waist, buddy. So that was fun. And hang on, what am I doing here?
I just keep looking at Erica and just being like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to deal with all of this.
Oh, get ready, Erica. No, it really
the show is off. The show is off. We're wrapping it up, folks. This is it.
We had so much fun.
Muting myself now.
Okay. So I put these 2 photos here because I want to talk about condition reporting, because it's a big part of installation and people don't know. And
a little more so in Santa Barbara than other places I've.
Oh, do you hear that, Sarah? She's in the room next door, so.
She's in the green wall.
Yeah, actually, I want to go back one because we both this morning when we were looking at this photo, were like, Erin doesn't have gloves on.
Yeah, me and Erin would not wear gloves. Oh, right. I was like, who's the person in the hat? That's me.
So you and Erin don't have gloves. Clearly, we're all glove happy.
They were so specific. Like they had the shoe covers. It looked like the ER in there.
And so I just want everybody to know that I don't know how many objects, I'm sure Sarah knows, but hundreds, if not thousands of objects all have to be cataloged. So on the right, you see the condition reporting table with Sarah and her special condition reporting gloves photographing a tissue box that was wrapped in tissue. So much like ludicrous stuff that comes up. And then on the left is me with this MC Hammer doll, because I swear to God, my brother and I had that MC Hammer doll. He's on the call, so he can maybe confirm. Oliver, do you remember? It had gold hammer pants.
Yeah, that is my doll, my original doll. So I don't know what happened to the pants.
Wow.
But he had.
I'm amazed actually at the quality of the Cabbage Patch accessories, because I always lost the accessories. Your shoes were still there, the bottle, and they were all pristine.
But those were sourced from other places. Only one of them was mine. And
the one in the
no, that was a friend. My mom went to a tag sale of one of my friends in town in Orange, and was like, "Oh, would you like this to be in an art museum?" She knew what I was doing with the dolls, but that one, it's in the back with the yellow sweater. You can't really see it.
This one?
Yeah, but she did not have shoes, and she also had dry rot rubber bands in her hair. The original bands were there. I think we ended up tying it with something else because they were just falling apart.
So I just like this photo because, as you said, we're a small team and we do everything. So Sarah and I rented a U-Haul, drove to LA, collected all the work. And I remember we showed up at your studio to pick up Be More, which was started in the studio. And you were, oh no, it was Black is Beautiful, yeah. And you're like, oh, you're here? I was expecting, I'm like, nope, it's me.
We do everything.
My yoga pants and a dolly.
You're like, yeah, the movers will be here in 5 minutes. And I'm like, how do you know that? You're like, I am the movers.
Yeah, we were calling you and I'm like, oh, are you at your studio? No. And I'm like, well, we're on our way. But so yeah, picking up all of the works, getting them, and because many of the pieces in the show we were so lucky to borrow from your amazing collectors. And I have to say, your collectors love you. I mean, everybody that we went to was so happy to be lending their work, so excited for the show, and just really like a really generous, really lovely group of people. And so in a way, I'm glad that Sarah and I had that experience, because again, it's about all of the relationships. Like, it's one of my favorite parts about my job is I have the opportunity to meet people, make relationships. You know, I have friends for life because of and not just with artists. Like I feel like, you know, you and I are super close now, but like,
did I ever say that? No, I'm just joking.
Oh, sorry.
For life, I don't know if I sign up for that.
That's embarrassing.
I'm just joking. I just want to reiterate though that I do have really amazing collectors, and they are, you know, super supportive, and you get to see that. No, I don't, you know, it's like it kind of trickles to everyone that's involved.
And it's notable. I mean, Sarah can attest. I mean, we are so grateful for everybody that lends work to the shows that we put, because so for people, you know, I'm sure everybody understands the process, but when you're putting an exhibition together, there are works that you really want that are not with the artist, they're not with the gallery, they're halfway across the country, or they're in another country because they've been purchased by a collector. And so there are different ways of working with loans, or maybe they're in the collection of another institution. And so there's this process of lending and borrowing the work. So again, like forming new relationships, and our exhibitions manager, Sarah, that's a big part of her job when we're working on exhibitions. So there's the element of packing up someone's work that's could literally be coming off of their living room wall, or who knows where it is, but you're we're packing it, shipping it. And, you know, to them, it's a beloved piece. And so you're reassuring the artist throughout, but you're also reassuring your lenders, and you want them to know that you're going to take really good care of it. So we were so lucky, and all of the works came from LA, just different parts. Sarah was driving a 15-foot truck through the Hollywood Hills, but holding our breath and pulling the like side mirrors in, but we got everything.
Also mention, like, for the collectors, I think they also, as much as they're like, oh, my baby has to leave the wall, you know, I think they also, again, they just want to help bring the artist's career further along, but it also adds some what's the word, to their work. It's now been shown in a museum show or whatnot, you know.
Yeah,
so
there's some prestige that's involved. I mean, and particularly important shows, or shows that are potentially important in that artist's career. So there are lots of different, you know, elements to that. But also, Genevieve, you were, unlike many artists, I think you support your collectors in a way, and did support your collectors in a way through your Freeze show that you know, not everybody is going to support their collectors or their fan, not fan base, but, you know, people who want to support you.
Yeah,
You're
my fans. I'm just joking. Just D. I'm pointing at, I can't see D. I hope he's still here. I can't see who's in the room anymore, but
yeah, so we're really lucky, and you know, during COVID, these COVID times, we've had another challenge, which is that the works in the show are here much longer than we expected them to be. So another way that the lenders and your collectors have been so flexible and generous is that we keep writing them and saying, so we're going to extend your loan if you're okay with that. You know, everybody has been so, of course, you know, the show was open for a week, and everybody involved wants people to see the show and wants it to have the exposure that it deserves. So they don't have a problem extending their loan. So we're, again, really lucky in that sense. So this is the last slide, but it's not the end. I just wanted to flip to this because this is part of the design collateral. This is a poster that is in a kiosk on State Street, which I know that I took a photo of you standing next to it, but I couldn't find it. Or maybe Erin took that photo.
I think I took a picture of Olivia standing next to it.
Oh, okay. So I was totally wrong.
So I could have, sorry, I didn't send that to you. But yeah, this is like larger than life.
Yes.
I was just like, does my face need to be that large in the streets of Santa Barbara? Yes. But apparently it does. And that was another great thing about the museum. You guys really, the advertising was amazing. And again, I'm really particular about my image. I remember you guys sending me back and forth a lot of things. And I think there's a way for any artists that are in the call here, that just to know when you're being too much, you know, it's good to know what you want and how you want it to look. But there were definitely moments where I was like, okay, I don't know if the person that's doing the, what is it? Whatever this is, sorry. The design of, of layout for whatever, you know, the pamphlets. There were many paper items that were made out of these things, but there were times where I was like, I don't know, I because I have like a very fine-tuned eye for certain things, I was just like, remember I was telling you, like, can he just turn that thing? And I was like, I don't know if that makes sense. And I'm fine if it doesn't make sense, or if it starts to look weird. Like, it's like knowing when not to, like, be on people's case, I guess, about the mini details.
Well, and I think another element of that goes back to this idea of collaboration, because all of the design suggestions you made were right. And it was important, first of all, no, it's true. And I mean, like, first of all, it's important that you feel, because it is your image, you know, even if it wasn't you physically in this image, but it was your work, it's you, it's your image. And it's important that you feel comfortable with it. But also there were little things that you saw that, you know, we're like in the middle of everything. So there were things that you saw that were right. I mean, just like little adjustments, but we were really lucky. We worked with an amazing designer, Matthew, who a friend introduced me to. And I, like, again, he and I clicked. It was like you and I hadn't worked with him before, but he was so excited about your show and so that's another thing. It's like, you're going to get better design collateral if the graphic designer is also excited about it.
Right. And I remember we gave him like a sample of the wallpaper and then, you know, some of the images, and it was like the pamphlet that's the background.
Back to the gallery guide.
Yeah, the gallery guide was
this is like a bifold gallery guide that's letter size. And that's the bit of wallpaper that he.
Right. So that when I saw that, I was like, whoa, you guys are really showing out for this whole thing. They don't mess around in Santa Barbara. And so I got excited because, you know, Cam has like their gallery guide or the booklet that they put out, but I think it more is for all the shows that are happening because there's many rooms there. So it felt really special to have this object that if I was a person just coming in to see the show, I would feel like I was walking away with a piece of art in a way, do you know?
Yeah, and that's really important for me. It's like I knew as soon as we started working on the show that I wanted to have exactly that. Like I wanted the gallery guide to feel like a complementary object to the exhibition, and we put it on a pedestal at the front, and there was a leaflet that went inside that's the map of the space. And I like it when an exhibition fully envelops you in all of these different senses, and you go and to have like a souvenir to take away. So I was really like excited about that opportunity to have this.
You guys have like TV screens posting up all sorts of things. It's really a lot going on there, which I was really impressed for it being a smaller space and a small team, but just so much support and, you know, from your board and just the community was really, I mean, really down to the fine details of like, we're going to name a drink after you, like at the opening. I was just like, what? This is.
What was it called? The Genevieve?
The
gin. Yes. Cool. Well, I'm glad that it felt that way, because I think, you know, it's a big thing. It's a big project. Like, let's make a big deal out of it and do the most that we can. But speaking of the gallery guide, there's a question that I wanted to talk to you about, which is like the didactics, and how you feel about text in relation to your work, because there are artists who want no text, right? They don't need an intro panel. They don't want wall labels. Some artists want all of it. Some artists want the wall label right next to the work to give it context. And like I said, we had this gallery guide, which had a text that I wrote, and, you know, you read and approved and made some changes. And then in it was a map. So we didn't have wall labels. That was a very conscious decision. So how do you, what are your thoughts about exhibition didactics and wall text and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's really, I take a long time like figuring out like titles for each work, but in that particular context, a lot of times it feels like it gets in the way because the way that show was set up, I wanted to feel like you're kind of strolling around. So even the photographs were extensions, like other homes almost. So like you're seeing this physical home in the space, but then as you're walking through, it's like you're walking through a neighborhood or something. It's just kind of how I envisioned it. So when you ask the viewer to kind of stop and like read the text, it becomes a little bit more like, okay, you get out of the imaginary kind of experience that hopefully you're creating for them.
Yeah.
But I think that the titles are still important. So I felt like, again, that attention to detail of putting that little leaflet in the books just added to that. I don't know, it just like looks super professional, which I was excited about.
Well, we were working on it on my laptop like until an hour before or something. And then feeding the paper into the 500 gallery guides.
Yeah.
And then that lady walked in. Some lady like strong-armed her way into the museum. I was like, what's going on here? And we were clearly putting the maps into the gallery guide, and she just opens it up and starts reading it. And we're like,
I think you can get them on eBay now. They're going for like $40.
I put them on eBay.
And they're not signed. If they are signed, it's not my signature.
Yeah. I made a stamp of your signature.
Erica's taking notes on that one, I guess. She's like,
So, no, I think, and so what we did is we had an intro panel, because as an institution, we feel that it's important. I totally agree. And there have been exhibitions where there was no intro panel, and that is totally the prerogative of the artist. I mean, but personally, I feel like it's important for our audience and people who come to see the show to give them some context. But what we did was we used just an abbreviated part of the exhibition text on the wall panel, and then the rest of the full text went into the gallery guide.
and then we were just, even I'm having flashbacks of the guys that came to put the vinyl up on the walls to like, even that I was just like, nope, just over a little bit, or like,
I know,
the wrong size, but so how can we make it work, or whatever, it's like,
Genevieve was FaceTiming with a family member. Like, she would go like this and then be like up a little bit. And anyway, and she's like, no, 1 millimeter down. I mean, she was like hyper multitasking.
oh my gosh, I'm not that crazy, am I?
No, I just you were, you
All done. I was like talking with my niece and my brother. I was just like, I gotta give them some time, and then also I'm working, so I look away.
Yeah.
But it's fun, like having sometimes, like I think earlier before the actual talk, we were talking about how things just kind of, you can't predict everything that's going to happen. We couldn't have predicted that woman was going to come and steal all our leaflets. We couldn't have predicted that, like, it seems like the wall can hold this writing, but when it shows up, and because of time, like, it's not the right size. So I think, we were just like, how do we figure this out? I'm not really the one to like boo-hoo about the thing that went wrong. I'm more like, how do we make it do the thing that we need it to do? Yeah. And I think you and I were able to go back and forth. And I also kind of saw you being like, oh, okay, so this is what I'm going to deal with next time. Do you know? Isn't as like locked in on those things as me. Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there every exhibition, something happens. I've dealt with, like, I can't even, some of the weirdest, like, fires, mudslides. Like, we had to evacuate artwork from the gallery here when we had the Thomas fire in Santa Barbara, and I was evacuated from my own home, like on the phone with Sarah and the sheriff's department, like trying to evacuate art. So like, that's very extreme. But yeah, things happen, and I think the stronger the relationship between everybody on the team, the easier it is to navigate those waters. And also, you just kind of support one another. Like, I would look to you to be like, how important is this to you? Because I'm willing to change this. I'm willing, like, if we need to cut more vinyl, we will. But it's like a dance between everybody involved.
I think so the museum has a few little rooms that kind of branch off, like one, like, kind of more slender room, and then there you go. So right, that above area there. Yes, thank you. I was like, that didn't sound right.
This is the above area.
I remember going to the gallery and be like, everything looks amazing. I'm like, but it would really tie all this in nicely if someone painted that wall pink. And that was never discussed really, but I was just like, I couldn't let it go. And I even was like, I totally know this is crazy, and like, I'll paint it if I have to, which means I'll ask Erin to paint it if I have to. Just kidding, Erin. But yeah, so it was cool for you to like just trust that it needed to be that, you know? Yeah, and that wall. Yeah.
But you were right. You know what I mean? It's like, if it was so out of left field and like didn't make sense, then it, you know, wouldn't have happened. But like, yeah, Mark painted the Norton, but I was like, okay, we got to get this, because this is the wall that had the intro panel on it, and the paint on that wall needs to cure for 48 hours before you can install vinyl. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm painting on Saturday.
Yeah, you did, and I was like, I'll show up too, but I got to get my nails done.
No, but it's right. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It was last minute. It was never discussed, but it was the right thing to do. And it seems like a little thing, but when you're in the space, I mean, that's another thing about exhibitions. When you're in the space, a little thing can make all the difference. And you might not be conscious of it.
Plan as well as this looks, do you know? But then it's still not the same as being in the space.
No, exactly.
And even can you go back to that other slide?
This one?
Yeah, so like the main door, you can circle that area.
This area.
Yeah, so then when we walk into the left.
Oh yeah, here.
Walk in, yeah. It's the right on the screen, but I think that was the one where we were like, we need the wallpaper to kind of go further than we thought it might have to go, just to make it feel like it's not abruptly stopping. And I think that was the one installation I did have to bring some extra wallpaper.
Yeah,
and
you had a spare roll. And if you hadn't had a spare roll, it wouldn't work.
Right. Right. Happy accidents here.
Exactly.
But you can come back. I just want to say that I drove to Santa Barbara for the second time ever when I was going to install, and I was following the GPS, but I did not have the right address, and I went like an hour outside, and the wallpaper guys are waiting for me to show up like first thing with the wallpaper. And I call Erin and I'm like, I don't think I'm anywhere near where I'm supposed to be.
This is not the right Paseo Nuevo. You were literally an hour and a half north of us.
I remember driving through these hills, like.
No, I don't remember it being so rural.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, I'm really good at telling you where that picture needs to hang, but I also am, yeah, I'm bringing some messed up stuff to the table.
Not really. But yeah, so I want to go back to that, your happy accident statement. Because while we were installing, or no, you were giving a walkthrough of the exhibition to our gallery ambassadors and to our staff, and you were talking about happy accidents in relation to one of the photographs, but you've also mentioned the idea of happy accidents a lot in these conversations. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I totally get what you mean, but happy accidents happen if you're on the right wavelength. Like, I think you might not chalk it up, you know, the photograph of you wearing a blue hat and having baby blue nails, and then you're standing in front of a home that has baby blue, like the same tone baby blue shutters.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, that's a happy accident, which, okay, I totally get that, but I also feel like because of how open you are, and because you're operating on this certain wavelength of like trusting the process, happy accidents happen. You might not be seeking them out, you know, but it's like things come together because you're allowing them to come together. And I think that speaks a lot also to the exhibition process itself.
Yeah, I remember one of those moments where it's like, and it's not always, you can say happy accidents, but just like cool how things start to like just be in sync with each other. Because I remember like the installation had all been finished, and I was just kind of standing in there seeing if I had to move anything like a fraction of a like millimeter. And I looked out one of the windows, and like one of the photographs was like perfectly like right there. So it really did feel like you were looking out at the neighbor like next door. And it
Right.
just started to like really lock in that titling of outside looking in, and just like, I don't know, it was really, I don't know. And I can't really explain those things because we're like, yeah, we want that to be there, but we weren't inside the installation making sure we could see certain pictures through the window, do you know?
Exactly. But that's exactly what I mean. It's like, I'm sure even if we thought more about it, we could find further proof of that synchronicity. I swear, you know, it's like when you start looking at it, the synchronicity has kind of come to light. But it's not, you know, I think you don't give yourself credit in those moments when you're saying it's a happy accident. Maybe the credit is more about like coming from that place of allowing it to happen. And that is you. I mean, like you said, you know, with the design collateral, if you push too much and you hold on too much, you're not allowing for the piece or the exhibition to have its own life and to take on the meaning that you're trying to give it. You're kind of controlling it so much that it's you're like choking it off in a way, like,
Right.
you know, you're not letting it be what it needs to be.
Totally. Hey, said it.
We did it.
We did it. Questions. Yay.
I'm gonna turn this, stop sharing my screen, I guess. Stop share.
Jeff's here.
Jeff.
Gianna's here too. OMG, Laura.
Yes. So much fun. You guys are a blast.
I was like, I wonder if anyone's still there.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I laugh out loud moments here. I love your camaraderie. You guys are so great together. And all the questions I prepared, you hit each and every one of them. So I just want to say thank you so much and bring a little attention to the fact that it is Alexandra's birthday today. So maybe we could all.
Oh, thank
Oh
you.
my gosh. I feel like we had talked about that, Erin, but I totally
That's
know.
right, we did.
It's also
What did you prepare for me, guys?
also my niece's birthday.
Oh,
She's 3 today.
oh, it's a good day to have a birthday.
It is.
Thanks, Laura.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mine was about how spontaneity was impacted this particular exhibition, but you just spent the last few minutes about that. So that was really fabulous to hear. And I'll just let you know, I am also a very much pay attention to detail. So I really appreciate that in your practice. So that's not a question.
You want to
That's
introduce yourself, Laura?
Sorry?
You want to introduce yourself as the amazing woman you are?
Laura Macra Johnston, and I am the board president at the Museum of Contemporary Art Santa Barbara, and utterly grateful for both of your efforts and all the collaborative efforts that supported you. And couldn't be more happy to be here.
And we couldn't have done it without your support and the support of the other board members. Some of, I think I saw Debbie here as well. And yeah, it was also, again, it's the institutional like relationships. Like I could lean on my board, and I could, and you guys were a part of it, and you got to meet Erin, and you got to spend time with Genevieve, and that's so meaningful. Instead of just having this board of trustees who are not involved and not hands-on, and it was just so cool to have everybody in the mix.
That's what we have to do when we're lean and mean.
Exactly.
I'll wear lots of hats.
Yeah.
Not quite as cool as the hat.
Yeah, so we should say another happy accident is we went to a vintage store. What is that called? Like I don't know. Anyway,
You've had lunch, I think.
Yeah, we went to lunch and Genevieve found this amazing headpiece, which I'll show you next week. And she wore it to the opening reception, and it was
yes.
We actually went out. So I had sent them a piece, and that was that mirror wall we were hanging up. And I was like, you know, I just feel like it's not even, it needs a couple more mirrors. Nothing like the artist sending an unfinished work to a museum show.
Also, only half of the mirrors arrived at the museum the first time around because some of them were still in your studio. Remember?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yep. The box was labeled, but it just didn't get in with you guys. So I think I also had to bring those, didn't I?
Yeah.
So the wallpaper and the mirror
Paper and mirrors, yeah.
were very late.
Turned out great.
Okay, we got a hand raise.
Patrice has a question.
Hi, I have a question. Maybe it's taboo. I'm Patrice. I know
Hi,
some of you.
Patrice is my sister-in-law.
And I followed Patrice before that, so that was like another weird connection.
It's a weird one. I love it. Hi from New York. So I have maybe a taboo question, but I think I'm very interested in, Genevieve, how you advocate for yourself for funding for museums, honorariums, and the position it puts you in, Alex. Like, what does that look like, advocating for funding as an artist, and then the curator kind of trying to negotiate or get you that funding?
I'm like, I don't even know. Did we have money for that show?
I know that's such a good question, Patrice, because that should be the first thing, right? Like, let's make sure the artist is compensated properly. But it doesn't, in a lot of cases, it doesn't happen. And I think a lot of times in an institution, you're like, okay, we have this tight, slim budget, and you're just thinking about getting the show up. Yeah. And so often a lot of the funds just go to the show. But the artist has put in all this work, physical work, maybe they've made work for the show. So it's a really good question. And in this case, we hadn't discussed it, but I felt really strongly about offering something to you, Genevieve, but it was, it wasn't like as much as I would have liked to.
But it was a gesture that actually I didn't know was coming. Do you know? Like, if I'm doing talks and stuff like that, and Erin, just wave, she's always like kind of like my voice that's like, you're doing, you're working these things, you should at least ask. And if the cause, I'm not necessarily talking about a museum show, but if whatever the thing you're signing up for, if you're passionate about it and you feel like your voice will add to the thing, then I'm not always looking for the cash, but I'm kind of like open to that sliding scale based on the group that is inviting you in to do that. So sometimes it's not always going to work out, but there might be other ways that it kind of becomes like it pays its way back in a way, if that makes sense, But I don't do anything for free. I'm just joking.
She charged me for her studio visit.
You too?
I
go with a test strip. I saw it. It was like, that's my shoe. No. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I'm in the darkness right now. I don't know why. Yes. Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
I think and I just want to say that it's still a conversation that I find uncomfortable sometimes, because I haven't curated loads of shows. I don't have this kind of precedent in my mind institutionally of like, this is how much you pay and this is how much time went into it. And so I get nervous actually, like, how do I broach this, and how do I make sure it's fair, and how do I make sure it's in the budget, and how do I, it's just, it's touchy, I think.
It is.
I think I will say, there's so much free labor involved in the art world that is not right. And, I'm sure so many of us have I interned for 6 years, and I did all sorts of things that I wouldn't be expected to do even if I was getting paid. And so I think there's this, issue of labor and what we value, how we value ourselves, and how the artwork is valued sometimes over the artist. And I just think that's, that's such a an ongoing question, but the one thing that we can do is just be really conscious of it. And, you know, we don't talk about it enough. Like there are times when I want to reach out to my friends and be like, oh, how much did you pay that artist? Just so I have an understanding. And, you know, people don't want to talk about it. It's like money and people don't want to talk about it, but I think we need to be a lot more transparent about it.
Agreed.
Where's Malcolm? There's Malcolm. Oh, such a good boy. Oh, he's speaking.
Oh. Cute. Well, we answered
Any other
everything, I guess.
questions?
Oh, I'm frozen.
No?
I was going for that uncomfortable silence, trying to
Sorry.
get someone into
Frozen again.
whatever we have to do.
Part of every Zoom call.
Yeah.
Am I back?
totally.
Can you hear
Not
me?
a Zoom call unless you have that, right?
Well, I have a question. I have a question for Genevieve that I wanted to ask, but like, I wanted to ask how you feel at the opening reception, because, you know, when you put all this work, like when years worth of work goes into a show and you've been running around and you're all dirty and grimy and you've been moving things from 1 millimeter to another, and then you have to get ready for the opening. Like, how do you feel when you're there in that moment? Are you able to enjoy it? Do you feel like you have to schmooze? Do you feel exhausted? Like, it obviously depends on the circumstance, but.
Yeah. Am I not frozen? Was I frozen before? No, you guys never noticed that, huh? Okay.
Oh.
Anyway, I would say that me getting ready for the show, like I might not even show up to the show if it wasn't for Aaron being like, dude, you need to actually start getting ready now. And that's really like the thing I really want to spend a lot of time doing, but then I never get enough time. So I just throw a hat on. Just for that.
It sure didn't look like you just threw a hat on.
No, it was sort of planned, but it's just almost like I'm putting on another role. And I don't mean for this to sound like I'm not who I am, but it's like now I have to go and perform artist for everyone that's shown up a certain way. Do you know? And I'm super generous. I want to talk to everyone who wants to talk to me. And even, you know, the creepy guy wheeling around in the wheelchair that happened to be your dad. And I was just like, wait, what happened to your dad? Like, not that all people, sorry, I didn't really sound that great, but you know what I mean? Like, that was about your dad.
Just so everybody knows, he had a hip surgery.
Right.
And I don't know, we had talked about I mentioned to you before that my dad really enjoyed Post Malone or something.
Yeah.
And he came up to you, he wheeled up to you in his wheelchair at the exhibition and made some comment about Post Malone, which is why you knew it was my dad.
I don't remember that part, but I remember you being like, oh yeah, that's my dad. And I was like, oh, that's your dad? Okay, I'm gonna go up to him. And he was actually, it was cool because he was like emotional. I don't know if he was more like, wow, this work is really moving, or like, I'm so proud of my daughter because she does.
It was both. It was the first exhibition that I've ever worked on that my dad was able to see in person, because I lived abroad for so long, and then we've never been in the same place, and I'm really lucky because my whole family is very much a part of everything I do, and I talk to them about it and I get their feedback and they know everything that's going on and they support me. And so that was the first time my dad got to see an exhibition, and he loves your work. You know, I had him edit my exhibition text as well. So I think he had been like saturated in this language around your work, and then he got to meet you.
And see it and be like, whoa, this is like almost more than I even expected, which I think is what we're trying to do. At least that's what I'm always trying to do. And it happened. So it was cool to see that happen, like that experience, and just like, it's always great meeting your family and like, yeah, just seeing all of it. And then I also didn't really know like what the community around Santa Barbara would who would kind of make their way through the door. And so that was really interesting, seeing people. Everyone was real, like we did a brief walkthrough of the show, and I felt like everyone was so quiet and like waiting for us to like drop some knowledge that I don't know if they ever got that, but just for like from start to finish, it seemed like everything was paid attention to, and I felt super welcome there. People really wanted to engage with the content of the work, and I felt also like I was saying some things to describe the work that might have felt a little harsh, or I don't know, like kind of ripping the Band-Aid off for some people, but they let me do it. It was like they wanted to learn more, you know? So that was a cool experience.
That was awesome. And you are really generous. I mean, I saw you were talking to people, because it's weird. People who don't know you come up and they want to touch you and they want to know about you and they want like time with Genevieve. And you were like, you know, if it was awkward, you kind of laughed about it, but you didn't not laughed at them, but you're like, oh, hi, like, you know, and you talk to people and you really give them time. And it's tough because the opening reception was, I mean, our walkthrough included was maybe 3 hours, and that's short amount of time with a lot of people, but you really gave people your time, which is not always the case.
At the gallery, like an hour before I had to be back to be there for the show, you know? So it's not like, oh, now we can celebrate, although there is a sense of that. It's more like, okay, now you have to even turn it up a little bit more. Just give that last bit of energy to really show your appreciation to the folks showing up, and for the people that invited you there, and for the people that have no idea what they're about to walk into.
And then you can go to the dive bar and dance at college night.
And somehow not get COVID.
The whole installation, Aaron,
Accident.
we're talking about COVID. And I was like, you guys, calm down with the hand sanitizer. Look at us now. But it's true, we didn't get it. We were in a sweaty room full of, I don't know, 200 college students.
I mean, they weren't lovely people, but there was a lot of them. Like, I feel like I'm back there in my car right now, actually, with this no air and steaminess, minus the loud music, disco lights. Sorry, I feel like everyone's just like looking at us like, what?
These people.
I know.
Mostly your brother. No.
I chose not to go to the dive bar, but if you come back, I'll go next.
That is literally the first place I'm going when I feel safe about this whole thing. I'm going dancing to the Wildcat.
Yep.
Oh man.
We are headed into our last
Sorry.
5 minutes. And if there aren't, you know, any other questions or comments for Alexandra or Genevieve?
Olivia's here.
I have
because DJ Gigi is going to get on the turntables in a minute.
Jeff has a question.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I'm interested that you sort of struggled with like the text to accompany. And I'm just curious, is it a struggle in terms of that's just like you naturally have the, oh, that needs to move a millimeter, but putting words to it is the struggle? Or is it more of a tension between trying to provide just enough context, but not put everything out? I guess I'm more interested in what the struggle is there.
Is that a me question or?
Or
Okay.
both, since you both work on it. It sounds like there was a lot of back and forth.
I mean, just coming up with I'm very involved when it comes to how my work specifically is spoken about. So there's a lot of me being like, okay with that. So, you know, Alex was doing her own kind of editing, but then I kind of have to be like, that sounds like what I'm getting at. But in the sense of like putting text in the space, that's more of a aesthetic decisions and could be a challenge. You know, you want to give the folks enough, you know, resources to know what they're looking at. I often think people don't give themselves enough credit. Like there's this kind of hang up that they're not sure how they're supposed to read something. And I'm really interested in people bringing their own baggage to the work because they're just as much part of the story. So it's kind of like a back and forth that Alex and I had in the sense of like how much has to be visible, whether it's wall text or labels next to the images, to help tell the story, I guess. Is that kind of how you felt?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part of that process for me was you saying, okay, I see where you're reading the work and how you're reading the work, and I'd rather that not be included in this text, like to a degree. I mean, obviously the exhibition text is a sort of unpacking and a contextualizing, but it was like, I think, you know, you really wanted to leave space for people to have their own relationship and their own understanding of a lot of the work. And I think, you know, in this case, that really worked.
Yeah, I think that happens often, and I'm getting better at verbalizing it to the point where like I'm not an amazing writer in any sense, and I know a lot of great writers who help me, but they know that I have to read the thing to know where it needs to go. So I can edit it in a way, but a lot of times I'll read something and I'm like, oh, I'm reading this. And I don't remember this happening specifically with you, Alex, but it happens with a lot of writing that I'm thinking about the person that wrote it. This is clearly, and I often will say, okay, I don't want it to be assumed that the person that wrote this is in a body of privilege in terms of like being a white person. Because I think we tend to talk like, oh, well, I have this reaction when I look at this or read this. And I don't want to sway the viewer. I don't want you to think about, I want there to be enough openness that whoever is reading it, it's kind of to their perspective. Or there's openness for them to have their story on it.
Right, and that's why it works so well for you to say like, maybe your reading of this specific part doesn't need to be in there. Because I'm coming from my own context, a different background, a different perspective. And so, and that's just like a writing struggle that I have, you know, the writing part of it is one of the hardest parts for me. And I really lean on my family a lot in those moments because my mother and my brother and sister-in-law Patrice, they're artists, and my dad is a writer. And so I really feel I use them a lot as a resource. And it's really important for me to get that perspective because it's so easy to just load so much of your own reading of a work or an artist or a practice into that writing. But if it's for a general audience, you know, that's not the best way to go. So I think it worked out really well.
That theory of like put all your jewelry on and then take off 5 pieces or something. Look at that artwork behind Gianna. Oh my gosh.
Who made that?
Can you wave? Can I get a wave from Gianna and Dee Carrison, my super supporter? And Okay, so that's, sorry, I'm acting like I'm wrapping this up. I'll hand the mic back to, I'm gonna put the windows down.
Usually she gives me that.
Really just felting.
I think that is a really, it's a wonderful way to end, because I feel like this was such a great conversation for so many different reasons. But one of the things that I love most about these is that, especially when Genevieve speaks about her work or but speaks with a guest, it's just this perpetual kind of self-interrogation. Everybody always has these reflections, and it really helps to give us that transparency that we're all looking for about how the art world works and how artists navigate and how curators navigate and how they work together to make it all happen. So as always, I thank both of you so much for sharing your time and your insight and all of your thoughts with us and letting us ask you all these wonderful questions. But we are so thrilled that we get to do it all over again next week. And we will talk even more about the logistics and all of the mechanics that go into this. Because I think we could probably spend a lot more on this particular conversation, but we will move to the next and keep it going. And more importantly, we'll just see Genevieve in her car, because that's really what brings me back every week. So,
Oh, wow. Really? Is your brother coming next week? What are the dogs doing in the background there?
In the back. That's amazing.
that's so cool. I love it.
Cute.
Face, she's like, why didn't I think of that?
Oh.
No, but so we'll be showing like way more details of the actual show. So then there'll be works that you all can really ask questions about more specifically when we show the show.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who came and joined us and talked with us. And definitely come back next week and we'll do it all over again. So everybody be well and be safe. And thanks, Alex. Genevieve.
Thank you.
See you soon.